anything, Joe, should Arsenal fans be? Let's see, because Eberechi Eze is a good market opportunity, you could say, given the way he ended last season, given his qualities, given the fact that there is a release clause in his contract to Crystal Palace in excess of £60 million. I'm sure many have looked at the situation before. For whatever reason, they've not gone for it. And Arsenal are exploring it as things stand. So they've held some conversations, not club to club so far. So it's more with the sort of player side of things. And it would be as a potential attacking addition as they weigh up several different possibilities, such as backup for Bukayo Saka on the right side, potential left wing addition, and number 9, of course, which we've talked so much about, and then maybe even an 8/10, and that's where Eze comes into the situation. He's high among their candidates. He's a serious consideration, and it's not like they would be looking at him and not a left winger or not a striker. It's like an additional thing, and that, I think, has maybe made the fan base quite intrigued by this possibility. But we're not saying it's going to happen. We're not saying it's advanced. And Arsenal, I think, for a player who's, I think, only got a couple of years left on his contract, is 27 years old now, wouldn't want to be going as high as the release clause. They would want to go lower if indeed they proceed with this. And I'm sure Crystal Palace would like to see the release clause met if they're going to lose their player.
That's generally what a release clause is for.
Yeah, although it's timed with Eze, so it has to be hit within a certain period. Otherwise, it's not active, and you just have to negotiate like normal. I don't know exactly what those timings are.
Right.
But there are many factors for Crystal Palace to consider in such a situation. Can we ever get that sort of price for him from anywhere? Yeah. Is he going to sign a new contract? Are we going to lose him for a lower figure subsequently? Can we sell a different player to make income less relevant? If not, do we need to think about this very seriously? What about the wishes of the player? Would he like to go? I'm sure it's an opportunity he might be open to exploring, given he actually started at Arsenal as a youngster and was released from their youth system, and it would present, Champions League football and that sort of thing. But we're not at that point yet. I'm just kind of laying the foundations for something that may develop, but in a relatively embryonic stage, as I understand it right now.
Okay, it's embryonic, but I think you're intrigued by it, aren't you?
Yeah, I think everyone...
Fans don't like to hear that when something's too good to be true. It normally is. The age profile will be a consideration for the Arsenal hierarchy normally, and we're seeing this increasingly with clubs, and I'm sure it's a view of the Arsenal ownership as well. We'll go for younger players with higher value, potential resale. For Eze, you'd be going for win now. You know, somebody who can deliver. You're not going to see that money back. You want sporting success as a result of such an investment. But, among the strikers that Arsenal are looking at, which is their priority position, you've got Victor Gyökeres, Ollie Watkins in the mix, Sesko's of the younger bracket. And so if they do go for one of the older options in attack, in the number 9 role, also bringing in, say, an 8-10 of that age profile, it is a thrilling prospect for the Arsenal fans that want them to challenge for trophies next season. But it will be a factor in any kind of decision. Also, and how far they're willing to push financially. And within this conversation does somebody need to depart? When I reported this, I said that part is unclear at the minute.
Right.
Is there going to be an exit? And there's been a lot of chatter around a Martinelli, a Trossard, maybe some of the others in there. That's something we just don't know yet, and it's worth being mindful of as supporters see the coverage around that topic.
Okay, well, something else that's still a bit unclear to me. Martin Zubimendi. What's happening there?
He's going to be announced at some point very soon.
Imminently. Could it have happened by the time this releases?
That is plausible.
Okay.
Because I think I reported, say, a week ago with our colleague James McNicholas that Zubimendi had been in London to meet Arsenal officials as part of the process of finalising and completing his move to Arsenal. That has been regarded as done and signed by Arsenal for some weeks, maybe even months. Arsenal have been factoring him into their, Mikel Arteta's, plans for the new season. What are Arsenal going to do in terms of Zubimendi, Rice, Norgard is incoming from Brentford, Marino, there's a lot of possibilities in there, and I think Arsenal are pretty pleased with how their new central midfield is going to be shaping up.
Well, just before we talk about how it might be shaping up, Norgard, to me at least, seemed to kind of come out of nowhere. What about to you? Were you expecting that one?
So it was a surprise to me, yep. No problem with that, but I didn't rate that one. But when you look at the situation, think about it, his profile, 31 years old, Premier League ready, already in London as well. He's the Brentford captain, Denmark international. He's got a pretty consistent record of appearances, not terribly troubled by injuries. He contributes goals as well.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does, and I think Arsenal will be pretty satisfied at getting him.
Well, we've alluded to it already, but what do you think it's going to look like in the midfield area? A lot of new faces.
Arsenal's sort of in-house recruitment team had been working on for some time prior to Andrea Berta's arrival as sporting director, was the young player from Rosenborg, who's ended up going to Manchester City, Sverre Nipan.
Right.
So they were looking at somebody for the future who could be one of the next big things in football, in a way that Tottenham bought in a Bergvall a year ago, or a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
What Arsenal have ended up doing is going for experience, and we talked with the Eze possibility about a win-now mentality. You know, they're also looking at a couple of options for the striker who are of an older age, as we touched upon before. They've brought in a goalkeeper in Kepa who is experienced and has won trophies, and they have a couple more positions that they're looking at. And I don't know, just say the left wing. Their options include, say, a Rodrigo from Real Madrid, who's played at the top level and has won things. So this is, bit by bit, shaping up to be an Arsenal recruitment operation and team and squad that, it still contains plenty of youth, and there's much to be optimistic about for the future. But Arteta, with what seems like growing external expectation and pressure, I don't think that same pressure is internal. The biggest pressure is probably what he puts on himself. But to win next season and to really convert those second place finishes into maybe a Premier League trophy, or getting that step further in the Champions League after reaching the semi-finals, now is the time, and maybe that's being reflected in their business in the transfer market.
I mean, it's my personal opinion that they should try to win now. I think
that'd be helpful.
I think that would be good. Okay, well, that's Arsenal. Let's talk about Chelsea.
Chelsea, as I just pointed out, are not averse to conversations about pretty much any player.
Yeah, they love to chat.
They love to chat. And Arsenal have long been looking for some backup to Bukayo Saka on the right-hand side, and how they could have done with it in his time out injured last season. Of course, they had Ethan Nwaneri there, who did very well initially, but didn't play much towards the end of the season. He's young, just 18 years old, and I think they see him more as a sort of 8-10 in the future. So who can deputise in that position? They looked into Bryan Mbeumo initially. He's on course to join Manchester United. They've looked into Madueke as an option. I'm sure they have some other options. The advantage of Madueke is he has capabilities of playing on the other side as well if needed, whereas Mbeumo very much has been in the right channel. And I think some positive conversations have been held on that too, but more the player side, not club to club, between Arsenal and Chelsea at the time of recording. Things can obviously change. So there is something there. It's not to say it's going to happen, but he's a possible departure from Chelsea, and it's why they've been looking at these wide attacking positions in the market. So, watch this space.
Well, what do you make of the Madueke rumours are, if we're talking about Arsenal?
If we're talking about them,
Ollie Watkins was of interest to Manchester United. What's happening there? Because it's gone a bit quiet now.
Me and Quick don't go hand in hand, but I'll try my best. Ollie Watkins, as reported by our colleague Laurie Whitwell, is among those on Manchester United's recruitment list. I'd be surprised if he wasn't on recruitment lists of top clubs. He's such a good striker and a good lad. And they've maybe held some inquiries with his camp. I'm not sure if that's gone to Villa directly yet. As to conditions of a potential deal, as they weigh up options to strengthen in attack, there may be a departure for Rasmus Højlund at some point. There may not. So these are all sort of spinning plates and balls being juggled in the air. Okay. And that's a situation that they're kind of attentive to. I think from my conversations with Villa, they see themselves as having no intention to part with Ollie Watkins. They want to continue with him up front for them. He's on the list of clubs like Arsenal, as they've been weighing up Sesko, Gyökeres and Watkins, who they went for in January. So Ollie Watkins is definitely an interesting case for the market because he's a Premier League proven England international, pretty guaranteed goal scorer. He is on a sort of older age than some of these younger players, obviously, but he has a great physical profile, a very strong record. He delivers, he's Premier League ready, and that's why he will naturally be of interest to clubs like Manchester United. It doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Yeah. Okay, well, one last one. You mentioned him already, Mohamed Kudus, West Ham.
No, but it's the first time I've actually knowingly come across it, certainly with a high-profile player, that it's, staggered for different territories. So it's novel for sure.
Yeah.
So I think Tottenham would carry appeal to somebody like him, Champions League football, remaining in London, but there'll be other options as well, and I don't think this one is close to a conclusion just yet.
Yeah, cool.
I would like to ask a question about clauses.
Oh yeah, go on.
If I may. How do agents and clubs find out about clauses in these contracts? Are they obvious? Are they listed somewhere? How do they find out?
There are some clauses that are confidential, and so a club that is looking into recruiting that player should not know about it and should not have a way of finding out about it. And they see rumours in the media and they speculate, is that true? That's the sort of innocent answer. And by the way, there are also clauses that stipulate that the agent is allowed to disclose it to potential buying clubs. And so that's, I guess, the skill of a negotiation when that contract is drawn up. But the majority of them, from my experience, are not meant to become public knowledge.
Presumably because it would be seen as like incentivising an offer if it was known publicly.
Yeah, one of the most common things that I pick up on in transfer negotiations is let's get that player to stay for one more year, even though he's almost certain to leave in that 1 year.
Yeah.
Here's a bit more money to satisfy the fact that you never got a bigger contract. Do us one more year. We could really do with you. Here's the clause if you want to go at the end of it. And everyone wins, provided somebody comes in and triggers that in a year's time. Or they just say, good, that the clause is there, but really on goodwill, that's just a backstop. We'll negotiate in a year's time. More often than not now, one of the conversations around renewals is, will it be with the release clause? There's a lot of speculation around Erling Haaland and his original contract at Manchester City and whether it included a clause. I remember when I broke the story about his renewal that it was intimated that maybe whatever mechanisms existed before had been taken out. So clearly there was something there. And a more recent example that we'll look into in the coming times is there going to be a release clause for the exact scenario I just mentioned to you with Anton Semenyo. Speculation, suddenly he signs a new contract. Is there a mechanism for him to get that move at a later stage? Gives him some money, gives Bournemouth some security. Job's a good one.
It was the quickfire round.
For Noni Madueke, I'm told that in the recent hours, contacts are taking place again with the camp of Noni Madueke. We know Arsenal are focused in Verge with discussions ongoing. For Noni Madueke is a separate topic, is a different topic. But for Noni Madueke, Arsenal remain in contact with his camp. And just to give you my feeling, when people close to the player continue to meet the club, means that, and that's my information, the player could be open to a potential switch to Arsenal. It doesn't mean that Madueke wants to leave Chelsea. It doesn't mean that Madueke is done at Chelsea or is leaving Chelsea to go to Arsenal 100%. It just means that Noni Madueke opened doors to a potential move to Arsenal. Then it depends on what Arsenal want to do, what Arsenal can offer, what Arsenal want to offer, because at the moment there is no official bid, no concrete negotiation yet, but just some contacts with Noni Madueke. I told you last week, and this week I can tell you that these contacts are continuing for Noni Madueke. We will be following the situation in the next days, for sure, but this is another case to watch in the upcoming days. And so, guys, that's it for this.
Bless him, he was an Arsenal fan. He was troubled by this. I mean, what are the chances?
Well, I think Arsenal's position at the moment is they don't want to sell, but if they advance Rodrigo, then there may be a possibility that either Martinelli or Trossard has to depart, and therefore there could be a scenario where Al Nassr bid for Martinelli and Arsenal change their mind. There are several targets on that left side for Al Nassr, also including Luis Diaz, but what I can tell you is two quick things. One, the Saudi Pro League have moved forwards their window. It opened yesterday. That was to allow Al Hilal to sign the Al Shabab striker Hamdallah in time for the Club World Cup. Other teams are now doing their business a little bit earlier. And the second point is that Al Nassr, as you have to do in Saudi, have requested a budget of 85 million euros that they want to put towards an attacker. It's not to say the bid will be 85 million euros, but they've asked for that central funding, which suggests a bid is imminent. Then whether it's Diaz, Martinelli, or even a more central attacker like Mohamed Kudus, who Spurs are also chasing, it remains to be seen. But there's a concrete possibility that Saudi deal makers test the resolve of Arsenal. Martinelli was approached in January, and now we'll have to wait and see whether a bid is forthcoming. But if one does arrive and it was 85 million, if you then move for Rodrigo at 90 million euros, the exit of Martinelli funds a player like Rodrigo, and Arsenal still have plenty of budget left. So it's an open